Alright guys, well here we are, HHS anatomy, the only time where it's encouraged to draw a penis, right, the reproductive system. Maybe one of the most commonly drawn items, drawings, certainly of anatomy that's present in most middle schools. Anyways, what I want to really talk about, guys, to introduce you to this system is, or these systems, is the fact that if you consider all of the systems that we've covered up until this point, which is pretty much everything except for the endocrine system, whether it's muscles and nerves, respiratory, cardio, all of those systems are working every single second, every minute, every day for your whole entire life, and every single second that they're working, they're vital to your existence. Right? Your heart's going to beat millions of times, and every single heartbeat is just equally as important as the last one. However, when we talk about the reproductive system, how many times in a lifetime does a person actually find that system truly useful? Meaning, essentially, how many kids do you have? How many kids are in your family? You know, you got like 3 or 4 brothers or sisters, maybe 1 or 2, maybe 0. If you consider how many times the reproductive system is truly useful, it's almost insignificant. And yet here we have all these tissues and all this energy, and we're going to tie into other systems like endocrine, all the hormones that are involved in making the system work correctly, just on the off chance, the rare occasion that it is actually useful. And it's kind of staggering to consider. So I just want you to think about that for a second, because every other system we've talked about, every second that system is working is useful, is vital to your existence. However, the 1 or 2, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 times in your entire life that the reproductive system is truly useful are equally important to your existence, our existence as a species. And that's just one thing I think is kind of cool about this system. It's almost optional in a way, but it's really entirely not. So here we go. We're going to go through the male anatomy first and physiology first, and then we'll cruise through the female. There's just some basics right there for you. The gonads for producing gametes, which of course are the sex cells. And this is really it, guys, for male reproductive anatomy. We're talking about the testes, where the sperm are produced, the epididymis, where the sperm are stored, and the vas deferens, where the sperm are being expelled, again, on that off chance that they might be useful. If you consider, especially for males, the billions, hundreds of billions, trillions of sex cells that are made that are entirely useless. But the 1 or 2, my family, my kids, 2 times that they're actually useful, it is entirely the most important thing ever, especially when you consider the existence of our species or any species that reproduces sexually. So again, I think it's fascinating to think about and really consider that for a second. So here's the part where we've all probably we're all probably familiar with this, right? Boys, I know certainly you are, where you go into a cold pool or a cold lake, right? We all know the story. And there's a whole lot of shrinking going on. Well, the deal with that is, the importance, the significance of that is that the cremaster muscle there is actually drawing the scrotum closer, because the ideal temperature for sperm production to be perfect is roughly 5 degrees below the body temperature. And so the scrotum is usually relaxed away from the body, so the temperature is roughly 5 degrees below. But to maintain those conditions, to keep it warm enough for the sperm to actually be produced, the cremaster muscle contracts to increase the temperature. So, of course, there's the penis, which, oops, I need a different zoom level. Sorry about that. which has some muscles in them that we've talked about actually in the muscular system. It's been a while, but we did talk about them. They're sort of like the Harry Potter spells. I wouldn't want to think of the poor consequence of the person that got that spell put on them. And I just wanted to show you a picture that all the slides on this actually, this set of notes is something that I stole from ECC, where I teach this in one of the bio classes there. So these are the exact same slides that I use there. I show this animation. I'm not going to show it to you guys just because I'm not in presentation mode, but imagine that wonderful animation of this guy right here getting aroused and ejaculating. It's super exciting stuff. Here's the similar picture to what you'll have. I'm sorry, this is the front view. You'll have a side view on the test for this unit, and that pretty much looks exactly like that. Don't worry about any of the digestive, skeletal, muscular, any of that stuff. Just worry about things that are directly involved with the reproductive system. They're just zoomed in views of that. And so you saw there are a lot of glands here. Basically, the glands' jobs are to get things just right, provide some fructose so the sperm cells have basically a source of food so they can have some energy to make their journey, if you know what I mean. Again, on that off chance that they actually do make that journey and that the off chance is useful. So there's some glands that are important here. The seminal vesicles, which are contributing to that that energy source. The prostate gland is too, but it's also helping to regulate the pH of the semen, which is a really important function to. It's seriously to learn all of the physiology of conception, and that it is basically it's like a miracle that it even exists. It really is, because to put it quite frankly, the female vagina is not a very nice place for semen to exist, for sperm to exist. And so the prostate gland helps to regulate. It actually is raising the pH so that those sperm can make it through the acidic conditions that they could encounter, and on the off chance. And so there's the path of ejaculation that you should know. The storage of the sperm to the expelling of the sperm. Don't worry too much about the muscles. Here's a picture of kind of the first half, I guess you would say, from the sperm in their storage location, the epididymis, and then looping around the bladder. There's a sphincter here there's thousands of sphincters, perhaps. Significant ones, probably dozens, but thousands of them throughout the body. This one here is contracting so that there's a buildup of pressure, so that this is physics, take it back, so that pressure can exist so that the semen actually exit penis. And there's the second view of that, where that sphincter relaxes here and allows all the semen to come out. But there is a sphincter up here in the bladder that contracts. Again, evolutionarily speaking, it'd be bad for male's semen to get pushed back up into the bladder and then just come out the next time they urinate. It's basically a waste, I guess, evolutionarily speaking, a waste of sperm. And so there's a sphincter that contracts there to essentially keep the sperm moving in one direction, out. We're going to talk about hormones for both of the male and female reproductive systems, and the hormones are the same. There's actually a lot of the same, if we go back, there's a lot of the same tissue, exact same tissue, developmentally, that exists in males and females. Of course, once the hormones kick in and the true development of these systems takes place, even early on, those are going to cause, obviously, different structures to develop, but the actual tissue itself, of many of these things that we'll see are actually developmentally the same tissue. And so here are the hormones. Everything's on a negative feedback loop, so it's dependent on kind of two or three things: the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary, where the gonadotropin releasing hormone is at and released from. The gonadotropins, which will be released from the anterior pituitary, are going to cause development of the sex hormones. That's both males and females. So luteinizing hormone is both for males and females. It's obviously doing different things, and it's just the same exact hormone. And then follicle stimulating hormone, which, as the name might trick you, stimulates follicles in females, but actually in males, it's going to cause these seminiferous tubules to respond to testosterone, which is going to start the creation of sperm, spermatogenesis, the creation of sperm. There's our buddy again. Again, I'm not going to show you that animation, but I just thought, it's good to see. It's a very nice sensual pose that he has there. All right, so this is a super zoomed in view of the hypothalamus and pituitary, and then completely out of scale, of course, because this is up in the brain, going down to the testis. But you have a very similar picture, actually maybe a little bit better one in 499 in your book. But again, it's all negative feedback, so as one gets released, it causes another to get released. But if there's too much, there's a regulation, so it slows down. If there's not enough, there's regulation, so it speeds up or increases. So negative feedback, negative, normal, so that whatever normal is always in existence. Very briefly, because we don't need to talk about meiosis, because it's a bio thing, essentially. But here's all the biology that you would ever care about right now. I'm going to zoom in really close. You can see how there are seminiferous tubules are all just basically extremely wound up like a small intestine, so it's increasing the surface area. So, and this is just kind of like the muscles, tubes inside of tubes inside of tubes, intestine just all wound up. The brain has lots of wrinkles and folds because we're trying to jam a lot of tissue into one spot. So you see the same thing here. But here's the deal for the meiosis part. Again, you don't have to know the chromosome number. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff because hopefully you already learned that in bio. But primary spermatocyte is going to divide into 2 secondary spermatocytes, and then finally into 4 haploid sperm cells. All 4 are viable sex cells, which we'll see is quite different from the female. So just wanted to point that out. So here we are, and that's where we stop.